with the new government. And as for the so-called Liberal Democrats, well, they just want to get their bottoms into the recall Toyota Prius, which passes for a limousine nowadays in the British government, and really don't care much about anything else. Christina, great. Let's hear quickly from Colin. Go ahead, Colin, in London.
Great show. Can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead, sir.
Good, good. Well, I actually rung you. I love your show, and I had to ring you because I thought I was going crazy this week. I've been reading the article in The Guardian about Israel offering to sell nuclear weapons to Apartheid South Africa.
Yes.
And I'm trying to make sense of this. I mean, here is a country. I visited Auschwitz, by the way, and I shed tears at what happened to the many people, Jews and otherwise, who suffered and died at Auschwitz and Birkenau. And I really struggle to get my head around Israel as a state.
Colin, do you know what? Colin, let me interrupt you. This is sounding like an interesting conversation, and I've got to go for a break. Will you stay on the line and we'll talk after the news? Thanks very much indeed, Colin. We'll be talking to Colin in London and many, many more of you after the news. I promise you, you don't want to miss the second half of Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, Voice of the Voiceless. This is the big conversation. This is the great debate. Before I go back to Colin in London, who sounded like a clever man with a very important point to make, let me just quote a couple of paragraphs from today's annual report of Amnesty International. And I quote, "Israeli forces committed war crimes and other serious breaches of international law in the Gaza Strip during a 22-day military offensive, codenamed Operation Cast Lead, that ended on 18th January. Amongst other things, they carried out indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks against civilians, targeted and killed medical staff, used Palestinian civilians as human shields, and indiscriminately fired white phosphorus over densely populated residential areas. Much of Gaza was razed to the ground, leaving vital infrastructure destroyed, the economy in ruins, and thousands of Palestinians homeless." I wish they would be able to answer that indictment. But of course, it's not an indictment that anytime soon is going to be pressed in the courtroom. But it's going to be pressed here in the court of public opinion, here on Press TV. If you've got a different point of view, then call me. If you're a first-time caller, call me. If you're a Turkish caller who's particularly proud of the flotilla setting sail within the next few minutes from the southern Turkish port of Antalya, then call me. But let's hear first from Colin in London. Colin, I was very much influenced and interested in this subject because I was one of the few people on the left who was able to travel widely in apartheid South Africa, working undercover for the African National Congress. All the ANC cadre that I moved amongst were South African Jews. They were supporters of the liberation struggle. Yet the so-called Jewish state was in league with the apartheid authorities, including on the weapons front, which is a point you were just making, Colin.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it just makes no sense that Israel would seek to export weapons of mass destruction. Israel, whose people were the victims of genocide back in the 30s and 40s, would wish to export the means of committing genocide on a massive scale to a regime that was actually headed by a Nazi sympathizer. What was his name? Vorster?
Botha was the penultimate one. Yes, yeah. De Klerk was the last one.
I mean,
but Botha was a Nazi sympathizer. Yes.
But you know, the question I wanted to pose is: there's been a lot of talk about rogue states exporting nuclear technology and so on. doesn't that effectively make, and I've got no axe to grind with any ethnic group or religion, but doesn't that effectively make Israel a textbook rogue state insofar as exporting nuclear material and weapons of mass destruction?
Well, you're absolutely correct, Colin. And many Israelis, including Mordechai Vanunu, who's just gone back to prison, agree with you and me. Hundreds of thousands of Jews around the world agree with you and me. You don't, of course, have to be a Jew to be a supporter of Israel, and some of the people who support Israel don't even really like Jews very much, including, I'm sure, that apartheid leadership to which you refer so eloquently. Brilliant call, Colin. Keep calling me. Let's go to Anwar in London. Go ahead, Anwar.